Alright guys, next we're going to talk about a reference angle. Okay, a reference angle is the distance that the terminal side of an angle is from the x-axis. Alright, so let's take a look at a couple of these and talk about our circle again. Okay, I'm going to bring back up the circle that we did our radian measure on just a second ago. If you take a look here, remember your x-axis goes this way. So this is 0 degrees, would be a 0 degree angle if that's where my terminal angle or terminal side of the angle was. This is 90, which is on the y-axis. This is 180 degrees. Okay, so basically what I'm looking for is how far that terminal side of my angle is from 0 or 180. You could even take a look at how far it is from 360 degrees. Okay, because that is also on the x-axis. So here's what you've got to do before you can do anything else. First, you have to make sure that you have an angle that's between 0 and 360. Okay, so you may need a coterminal that is between 0 to 360 degrees. After that, you're going to subtract using 0, 180, or 360, because those are the angle measures that are going to be on the x-axis. And then third, here's how you know if you're on the right track. Okay. Lastly, your reference angle must be between 0 and 90 degrees. Okay. So now, let's take a look at 120. I want to find the reference angle for that. So first, is 120 between 0 and 360? It is, so I don't have to find a coterminal. Then I'm going to have to subtract using either 0, 180, or 360. Well, how do I know which one to use? Well, which one is 120 closest to? 0, 180, or 360? Well, it's closest to 180. Okay, so what we're going to say here, when you subtract, you're going to use whichever is closest. Okay, so then I got to figure out which way to subtract. If I do 120 minus 180, I get a negative number. And my reference angle has to be between 0 and 90. So I'm going to take 180 minus 120 and get 60 degrees. That is my reference angle. Okay, reference angles will make a whole lot more sense in the next couple of days as we talk about the unit circle and values on it. This is going to be super important. So for today, we're not necessarily talking about the circle, but we're talking about the angles that will be in the circle in a day or so. So now, for number 2, this is a negative angle measure. It is not between 0 and 360. So what I'm going to have to do first is find a coterminal between 0 and 360. Well, we did that up here above, remember? These are the same angles we used there. Okay, so basically all I had to do was I added 360 and got 135 degrees. That is my coterminal. Then, because this coterminal angle here is between 0 and 360, now I'm going to go to step 2, which is subtract using 0, 180, or 360. Well, which of those is closest to 135? Well, that would be 180. So now which way do you subtract? 135 minus 180 or the other way around? To get an answer that falls between 0 and 90, I have to do 180 minus 135, and that will give me 45 degrees as my reference angle. All right, so I'm going to give you just a minute, or you may want to pause and do number 3 on your own, and then you can hit play again and come back and check, your answer with mine. All right, so 660 is not between 0 and 360, so I'm going to have to find a coterminal. I'm going to start out subtracting 360, and I get 300 degrees for my coterminal. And then 300 is closest to 360. So I'm going to take 360 minus 300 to get a coterminal of 60 degrees. Then for 5 pi over 6, you've got some options. You can work in degree measure, which means you've got to convert this, but then you'll have to convert it back. Or you can work just in radian measure. Okay, I'm going to do 4 and 5 differently. I'll do this one in degrees. I'll do this one strictly in radian measure. And, then we'll talk about it. And then I'll probably do number 6 in radian measure as well after you've had a chance to work it on your own. So, first thing I'm going to do for this one is convert it to degrees. So that's 150 degrees. 150 is between 0 and 360, so I don't have to find a coterminal. 150 is closest to 180. So I'm going to take 180 minus 150 gives me 30 degrees. Well, that is my reference angle. But because I started out in radians, I've got to convert my degree measure back to radians. So I'm going to take my 30 degrees times pi over 180 gives me 30 pi over 180 reduced will give me pi over 6. That is my reference angle in radian measure. Okay. For number 5, 3 pi. If I subtract 2 pi from that, that will give me 1 pi. Okay, so this is my coterminal. And so I want to show you something with this pi here real quick. If you take pi and convert it to degrees, guess what? Pi is 180 degrees. So since this is 180 degrees, it's not between 0 and 90. So I'm going to have to subtract. Since this is equivalent to 180 degrees, I'm going to do my coterminal of pi minus the 180 degree equivalent and get 0 degrees or 0 radians as my coterminal. Okay, that one's a little tricky. All right, so now you decide if you want to work this one in degrees or radians. See if you can work it on your own. Hit pause, come back and join me if you get stuck or when you finish. And I'm going to work it in radian measure. Okay. So at the top of the page for this one, we went ahead and added 2 pi, which was 6 pi over 3, and got 4 pi over 3 as the coterminal. Well, what I want to do here is I'm going to have to either, since it's not in degrees, using 0, 180, and 360 is kind of tough. But I know that 180 degrees is equal to pi. So what I know is that this is a little bit bigger than 1 pi. It's 1 1/3 pi. So I'm going to take this 4 pi over 3 and subtract pi, which is the same as subtracting 3 pi over 3, and I end up with pi over 3. That is your reference angle. It is going to be between 0 and 360. Sorry, 0 and 90. So, just to double check that, you can check it here. Pi over 3 times 180 over pi. Okay, so 60 degrees is equivalent to pi over 3. So this is my reference angle in radian measure. It's 60 degrees in degree measure. Okay. So you could have gone about it this way, and for some of you it might have been easier to do it that way. If you need it like that, let me know next time I see you in class and we can work it that way.